Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Tro, man, it's been a crazy time, but it's so good to be with you again, man. It's been too long. I'm so excited about this episode. How are you,
me
man?
Too. Yeah, I'm doing great. We have a very special person. Okay, somebody who I know shares very similar feelings to both me and you, Brian. Somebody who's very brilliant and really working in the epicenter of the obesity epidemic. A very amazing woman. Her name is Susan Wolver, Dr. Susan Wolver. And she's got an interesting story. Actually, she didn't start out as a smart internist like us. She actually did 10 years as a flight surgeon serving in our military. So we have to thank her for that. And but she did see the light eventually. And after doing medical school at Wake Forest and doing her flight surgeon and serving in the military, she went on to do her internal medicine residency at VCU and then later on got obesity medicine certification. And just like you and me, Brian, she was tired and fed up with not being able to help people. And now she is helping people in a multidisciplinary practice over in Virginia at VCU. And she's having amazing results. I've seen her talk at the DGA and I got goosebumps. So I want to say I'm very happy to have you on, Dr. Susan Wolver. Can we call you Sue?
Of course.
Perfect. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for stooping down to our level.
And thank you for your service. Thank you for your service.
You.
Let's hear your story. We know it's remarkable. Tell us your story. How did you morph into what you are now?
Well, first, I just want to thank you so much for having me. It's an incredible honor to be sharing the mic with you guys today. It's definitely a mutual admiration society. I follow you both on Twitter. I feel like we're very much like-minded. So my story began actually when I got to be middle-aged. And every time I stepped on the scale, I weighed more than the last time. And that was following the same advice I had been giving to my patients for decades. And actually, as opposed to some other primary care doctors who may have just stopped asking, I continually tried. I found new tools, new websites, new things to help my patients, and was incredibly unsuccessful. And when it started happening to me, all of a sudden I had that epiphany, the light bulb. Maybe it's not that my patients aren't following my advice. Maybe my advice stinks. So I started on my own journey to figure out how to lose weight. And I didn't have a lot of weight to lose, but it was creeping up. And had I not done an intervention, I certainly would have had a lot of weight to lose. And that's when I found sort of the low carb way of eating. And it was really nothing short of miraculous. And I think anyone looking from the outside into the things we do think, it just can't be true. And it's not until you do it, as many of us have, and see it, that you really can't unsee it. It's game changing. And I think the biggest game changer is I wasn't hungry. Every other eating plan, diet I did, I actually would try and convince myself, oh, I'm hungry. That's good. That means I'm going to lose weight. And of course, that goes against your biology. You're doomed to failure. So I was effortlessly able to take off 15 pounds and get back to my normal weight, and thought, well, maybe I should try this with a few patients. And my patients had been desperate to lose weight, and I work with them too. And I thought, maybe I'm really onto something here. And so I started learning everything I could about it, telling my patients that I wanted to do more of this. They're all like, sign me up, what we're doing isn't working. I never put someone on insulin and had them say, thanks, doc, I feel so much better. And all I did for the first 20 plus years of my practice was add medication and watch my patients get sicker and sicker and sicker. And now these patients were starting to feel better, come off of medicines. And that's when I decided I needed to get board certified in obesity medicine so I could use medications more effectively, learn more about this horrible crippling disease. I literally feel like patients who have obesity, it's like they have cancer. I mean, their lives just get shut off more and more. They feel sicker and sicker. And when you can turn that around, it's why I went into medicine in the first place. I just wasn't able to achieve it for more than 20 years.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean, I get goosebumps when you're talking, because I can identify so much, and that's exactly, how I felt too. It's like, I'm not helping these people. Putting them on insulin is not helping, and they're getting worse. And then we say, keep doing what you're doing. I mean, it's so frustrating. It is unbelievable now knowing what we know, how patients are managed, because I have patients and I know how they would be managed somewhere else, and I'm so fortunate and blessed to have them as patients, because I say, look, there's a different path, but we have to be unified in our approach. We have to have them trust us, and we have to be invested in that patient, right? And that's what you're doing. So how do you do that? How do you get past this mental part of it and the addiction part of it? Because we had a chance to talk a little bit beforehand, but how do we help that part of it? Because all these patients have been told, I'll give you just a scenario. Yo-yo dieting, up and down, you lose a bunch of weight. The biggest fear of my patients right now that I'm hearing over and over, I'm going to gain all my weight back after I'm done with this. Next fear is like, okay, I'm stressed. I need a cookie to get through. What do I do when I'm stressed? They're fearful of being hungry. They're fearful of a lot of stuff. And we all can identify. So what do we do? And probably by the time they get to you, they've tried everything else anyways. So how do you reach that person who's struggled their entire life?
So you said something very interesting. You said, what do I do after I'm done with this? That's just exactly the point. You're never done with it. So my patients say, how long is this program? I said, as long as you're alive. Because until primary care doctors know how to treat obesity, I really can't return that part of their care to them. And I was one of them. And I had to go and get my own training because I got zero in my training. So I had to self-train to help these patients. And so I have good data that I'm going to publish. I can't give you the specifics, but people that go away for more than 3 months gain weight. So and there's actually good studies as well that says that the most important part of a weight loss program is the frequent follow-up. So we try to surround our patients with touch points. So we never let them go more than 3 months. Most people are seen monthly. Very, very few people can go actually more than 3 months. I do have a few, but very few. And they know I always teach them 5 pounds stop. If they ever go up more than 5 pounds from their lowest weight, they've gone to a little bit more black and white, all or nothing thinking, and they're on their way to gaining back all the weight. So they know if they ever go up 5 pounds and they've gone away, they need to come back.
I think that's great advice. I've been debating this whole thing with Tro a little bit, because for me, as a new doc, I've been doing this for a while, but now having all the monitoring, my least favorite part of it's the scale, right? Because it can lie, especially at the beginning. People have this expectation they're going to lose 40 pounds in the first 2 weeks or something. And so the scale I see, but I'm following insulin levels, I'm following continuous glucose monitors, and that is an early indicator. So my friend Tro here, who's the guru, he says, look, Brian, long-term, the scale is the most important tool we have, because when you see that 5 pounds weight gain, we can reach out to that person and try to help them. So absolutely, it's true. You've convinced me of that. And I think that's really critical, because a lot of times when we're doing the wrong thing, we put our head in the sand, and then all of a sudden it's 30 pounds they gain. What happened? What happened? And well, I didn't just gain 30 pounds yesterday, right? So I think that's a really critical. And the other thing you pointed out was a 3-month, the standard of care in diabetes care right now, 3-month follow-up. In 3 months, you have a train wreck on your hands. That person can end up in the hospital if we're not monitoring. But guess what? If your sugar spike, I can see it right now, right? So it's really, the tools we have are remarkable.
Can I ask you a question, Sue? So I know I know you have a multidisciplinary team. I know you're doing amazing things, and I can't wait to see that publication. And I love kind of the research coming out of the clinical world. So please share that with me. What I wanted to ask you was, I know you've refined your approach over time. You mentioned kind of before we started here that lifestyle is always the cornerstone. You've dabbled into mental health. I know you have a multidisciplinary clinic. You can use medications if needed, And you also mentioned food addiction. So can you talk about the transformation of your own clinical practice and how you've absorbed these new tools over time and how you found them effective, specifically the mental health? Because Brian always talks about that. We always talk about that. We've had Chris Palmer on. We've had so many, Amy Berger on, talking about the mental health implications of lifestyle and the effects of ketogenic diets and low carb diets on mental health and vice versa. So can you talk to us about how your clinical practice has changed?
Sure. So it's been an incredibly iterative process. And as we were talking earlier, I learn from my patients. And people who sometimes fall off, go away for a couple of years and come back, I'm really excited because I always feel like the program is in a different place and I have new tools to help them. And if they went away, then it's because I didn't have enough to give them at that time. So it's on me, not on them. So I now have better ways, and I keep looking for better ways to engage my patients. And I really think it's all about engagement. So I think I probably, when I started in 2013, so I've been doing this for about 7.5 years, about 2 weeks into it, I realized I needed mental health help. It didn't take very long to realize that what I say to my patients, now we have a lot of what we call Wolverisms. And one of the Wolverisms is that weight loss is about 25% what you eat, 75% how you think. And I find low carb to be very transformative in the eating part because it takes away hunger. So when you're no longer hungry, then all you have left is this up here. But that's the really hard part in the world that we live in, the world that is still so conflicted about how we feel about sugar and starch. I mean, most people will say, yeah, sugar is probably bad for you. But come to my birthday tomorrow because we're having a huge cake and we're going to celebrate Week of the Nurse, as I affectionately call it, Week of Kill the Nurse. And we're also going to celebrate the nurses on the front line taking care of the COVID patients who are not doing well in the ICU with diabetes and obesity. And we're going to give them ice cream sandwiches bigger than their head and cookies and pizza and all this stuff to celebrate them for taking good care of the patients who are not doing well. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. We're so conflicted. And it starts when we're born. I mean, we fall down and we get a cookie. We have a breakup and we get a pint of ice cream. We celebrate with sugar. And so as I talk about, the eating part is the easy part. It's detaching the food from love, detaching the food from every emotion that we have, using it as a drug, sugar specifically. And that's the really, really hard part. So I started off in the very beginning having sort of group meetings and having a health coach facilitate the meetings, and I would pull the patients one at a time. And that just got too big too quickly. And so now I've sort of detached what I call lifestyle coaching sessions over 4 weeks in the very beginning of my program to help give my patients the tools that they need to move forward. And the whole lifestyle coaching thing has been a very, very iterative process. But we think we've really hit on something really great. We have 2 health psychologists that work with us that have helped to really refine the curriculum for that lifestyle coaching. And then something that I find absolutely invaluable is the book, The Beck Diet Solution. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but of course, Beck is the father of cognitive behavioral therapy. And I read sort of book after book after book to try and give my patients the tools, when in the beginning, I could really not help all that many. Maybe 25% of patients just needed to change their diet. And I was really unsuccessful with changing behaviors. And so I knew I needed a book on how to change patients' behaviors. And when I found this book, literally my hair stood up on edge because it's diet agnostic, which is great. And it just gives a very practical 6-week program of a daily behavior change, all of which I think are absolutely essential in helping our patients with that very, very difficult part. Are you guys familiar with that book at all?
It was the Beck Diet.
Yeah, the Beck Diet Solution.
Yeah. I'm buying it now.
Train your brain to think like a thin person. It's the Bible. I make sure all my patients get it. I have them buy it used on Amazon because it really isn't even in print anymore. It's hard to find. And I love the book so much, I actually went to the Beck Institute to train. They actually have training courses. So it was a 2-day deep dive into this material. And it really was very game-changing in my practice. They have things like the hunger experiment to teach patients that hunger is not an emergency. I always go back to biology. Hunger is incompatible. If you think about us roaming the tundra or whatever, hunger is incompatible with survival. And so when you're hungry, your body will want to eat, which is why most diets that make you hungry will fail. So some people have that hunger, that biological hunger dialed up, especially if they've been eating a very high carb diet. If they develop hunger, they have like maybe a 10-minute window before they're ravenous and wanting to eat off somebody's arm. When you eat a low carb diet, as you both know, hunger builds gradually, but you've got to convince your brain of that because we're so afraid of hunger, especially people in jobs who can't get away easily. So someone who has to work on a factory line and they're there for 4 hours and they get a 5-minute break in that 4 hours. Oftentimes they'll eat in preparation for hunger because they know if they get hungry, there's nothing they can do about it. I find the same thing with surgeons. I have some surgeons that I take care of. They know if they go into surgery for 8 hours, if they don't eat beforehand, they can't scrub out and go eat. And so when they eat low carb and they're not hungry, they still have to convince themselves that their hunger will build gradually. And doing that hunger experiment really helps them with that.
Yeah, I can't tell you what we have to realize is once you take somebody's hunger away, and certainly a stable blood sugar and ketones will do that. I mean, ketonemia will take the hunger away. A stable blood sugar will take the hunger away, okay? That'll take the hunger away, but it doesn't take any of the mental stuff. Your grandma giving you cookies, you feel like, it's funny. Me and I have a health coach here, amazing, awesome person, Amy Igis, and she's
I know her well.
Yeah, we talk about kind of the residual stuff that we've noticed about ourselves over time. And every time I go to mom's house, it's that loving feeling. The first thing I do, I walk in, hug mom, go to the fridge, open the fridge. And she was saying, when she goes to her brother's house, the first thing she does is she walks in and she goes to the oven and she opens the oven. For her, that's where mom, and that's where they used to put all the baked goods and the sweets. And for me, it was, we used to have all the, the yummy stuff in the fridge. Right. And it's like 30 years later, we're still doing this. Right?
Food.
We're still doing this.
Love.
Right.
Well,
food, love, or food emotions, or food and social norms, or food
and associations, Tro, like those sugary cereals and Saturday morning cartoons. People go back to that right now. I'm seeing that, and people go to that. That's the biggest disaster, by the way, for your blood sugar. Non-fat milk and sugary cereal, forget it. You're done for the day. But, those kind of associated, for me, I think of chips, salsa, and margarita, right? Just relaxing with friends, and that's associated with relaxation and Friday night, right? So breaking those associations is critical. That's why it's so important. That's why you learn from your patients over all these years, and now you start to see that pattern that's happening, and that's absolutely correct.
But I think the one thing, Sue, that you pointed to that's very insightful here, and I want to reiterate it to the people listening, is the use of food as a reward, right? The use of food as a reward. Like, we anticipate hunger and then we reward ourselves with food, right? And so if you are able to detach from that reward a little bit, if you're able to recognize that, hey, look, when you're stressed out, the closest source of reward for you is the fridge. After that, it's the alcohol cabinet. After that, it's the, call your doctor for an anxiolytic or call your drug dealer for a high, right? And after that, it's, who knows what else. So, and all these people, your drug dealer, your doctor, the fridge, Hershey's, McDonald's, they're all happy to make you rely on them for happy hormones, right? And, versus things that are harder, which Brian has always talked about, having a sense of purpose, family, bonding, these things can certainly replace exercise, right? You want happy hormones, you need happy hormones, right? Certainly there's other ways to get them, but it's breaking that cycle. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's really important. It's under-recognized that, that food can be, just a source of stress release for a lot of people.
And a fast, easy, and unfortunately cheap way to do that. And we actually spend quite a bit of time talking about that. As you both know, evenings are the hardest for most people. Their decision making has been exhausted by making decisions all day long. They're tired. I mean, it's a perfect storm in the evening when you sit down to relax. It's a very vulnerable time. And what I tell my patients is, or if you have a lot of stress in your life, of course we all do now with COVID, and what we're all looking for is that comfort. And I tell my patients, it's like the binky when we're little. We have something that we can easily get some self-soothing, and we still need that as adults. And unfortunately, most of us have used food. And when I ask patients, well, we're usually very concrete with patients, and I say, if we're going to take the food away, what are we going to put in its place? We can't just leave that vacuum. We need a toolbox. And I ask them, what makes you relax? What makes you feel good? And can I tell you, the majority of my patients sit and look at me and don't even have anything readily available. That's how stressed out and crazy our lives have become. And so we sit down and we troubleshoot. Okay, what kind of things do you like? Some of my patients actually make what's called a stress box, where they throw a bunch of things that they like: puzzle books, their knitting, the Bible, some music, a deck of cards, adult coloring books, things that when they find themselves going to the fridge, but there's no hunger in their belly, I make them veer the other way to their stress box. And sometimes it reminds them of the things that might give them some sense of calm and relaxation.
Can I just say something here? I'm getting goosebumps right now. Okay. Replace what you can't restrict. You can't restrict that food because you're looking for that, soothing, and you're looking for that to fill that void. You better find something to replace it with. And I love it. I tell people exercise, bonding, meditation, spirituality, hang out with your family, call a friend, literally anything else, hiking, walking, anything. You won't be on a hike like halfway in and like run back home because you have to eat. It's not going to happen. You won't be talking to your priest and then say, no, I have to stop praying because I got to go and I got to get a meal, right? You won't be laughing with your friends and like stop everything and eat, right? So
or working in the yard or doing whatever you enjoy, collecting rocks. I don't care what it is. Find something you love in your place of peace, because that's going to lower your insulin level down. Trust me. I've looked at my sugars and watched what happens when I'm cool and calm and not stressed out. Right. So, gosh, Doc, I'm so excited. One more question for the guru is, when people come in and you're sitting down with that patient for the first time, what do you think is the biggest indicator of success or failure coming up?
So you said guru, is that for me? You didn't
Yes,
call me
that's
by
you,
name,
of
so I'm
course.
not,
Yeah, it's definitely you.
Tro's a
there are
little
two
kid.
other,
Tro's a
two
little
other
kid
gurus on the line.
No,
we want to hear from you.
Your expertise, you've been doing this a lot longer than we have, really. And so for me, that's what I'm trying to figure out in my brain. I have my ideas, but I'd love to hear from the expert.
So again, the iterative process in the beginning, and I'm actually writing this up as well. I had doctors refer patients to me, or their providers refer patients to me. And I'd oftentimes get a patient sitting in the chair for a very valuable initial weight loss visit that becomes rarer and rarer as the waiting list gets longer and longer. Not really sure why they're there, because their doctor wanted to come, not sure what I do. And so one of my iterative processes was I have to have a more informed and motivated person sitting in that chair for that initial weight loss visit, because at one point in time, I had more than a year waiting list. And that when someone's ready to lose weight, it's an emergency, right? They will actually start sending me emails, promising me their firstborn children, please get me in, whatever you can do. And those are actually the people I really want in my program, the ones who think it's an emergency. So I had to iterate the program. And now what I have is a free informational session where I talk about the problem of obesity and how I think it got here. Obviously the Ansel Keys and sugars and starches and all of that kind of stuff, very high level, the complications of obesity. I never say comorbidities, because most of the chronic diseases we see are actually due to obesity. treat the obesity and those conditions go away. So we talk about the complications of obesity. And then I talk actually about medical and surgical weight loss. And I give them some tools in that informational session. I make them all know what their BMI is. If I ask them all what their cholesterol is, and if they all know their LDLs, every hand goes up. If I ask them if they know what their BMI is, probably only about 10% of people. Again, missing the forest through the trees kind of thing. And so I teach them how to read labels, and I teach them about medical and surgical weight loss and who might be a candidate for each. Then, if they're interested, they have to fill out 6 pages of paperwork. And almost all of that is mental health. One is sort of, an eating screen and their history of how they've done with prior diets and medications, and who lives at home with them, where they shop. Do they have to use assistance with shopping, food stamps, shop at the food bank? And so all kinds of questions like that, what their cooking skill is. And then we do mental health screen, PHQ-9, GAD-7. We do an eating disorder screen. We do a Yale food addiction screen. And we do, actually, our newest one is actually an ACE score for adverse childhood trauma. And all that is so informing. So that's a lot of paperwork. So they have to fill all that out, get it back to us, and only then do they get an initial weight loss visit. And I have less than a 3% no-show rate for that initial weight loss visit, when it was probably 25% before. Because
Wow.
People are really excited to get in, and they know when they're sitting there exactly what I do, and they know it's exactly what they want.
Tro's
Can
going
I-
to gloat now. I'm going to mute your mic. I don't know how to do it. How do I mute Tro? Because I could see him getting so excited over there.
Okay, so look, I have to say right here, haven't you noticed, look, first of all, it's like, I want to say it's like, it's nice to know it's like you're doing the exact same thing. We're all doing the exact same thing. You, me, Brian, and we're all in different parts of the world, and we all got there from different ways. And I want to talk about this because the ACE childhood questionnaire, the Yale food addiction scale, and we use also the binge eating scale. I think these are so important. And isn't it, first of all, we know that there's a high concordance rate between childhood adversity and obesity and all chronic disease. We absolutely know that. But what I love is, as the patients are filling it out, they're like, oh, wait, is this affecting me? Oh, wait, is this affecting me? Oh, wait, do I have a problem with food? How is it I feel? I feel like the act of filling these forms out is like a period of like good self-reflection. Have you noticed that it's opened things up for you to kind of between you and your patients? A lot of times when I was a patient, I hated doing these forms. I felt like, what the hell is this? But now I see that it's a way for patients to open up. So what have you learned from collecting ACEs and YFASs? I'm just curious.
Well, first of all, it's a little difficult because it's the very first time I'm meeting the patient. Although they've seen me at the informational session. It's like, hi, how are you? Let's talk about your childhood trauma. So that's very difficult. Yeah. But I couch it in the setting of, look, I want this to be the last program to help you lose weight that you're ever going to be in, because we are going to be successful. And in order to be successful, I have to understand you. I have to understand how you got here. And I have to understand that we're going to give you all the things you need to be successful. And oftentimes with the childhood trauma, people have not actually sought mental health help for those very horrible experiences they've had. And as we all know in this business, sometimes the food they eat and the weight is not the problem. And if we treat them in a weight loss program, we are not addressing the correct problem. So sometimes I'll tell them, I think that we're going to be better off with, high depression scores. If we get you some mental health help first, get you in a better place so that you can really use this program. So let me refer you back to your primary care doctor. Let's, talk about mental health services that we can get for you. And let's see you back in 3 months and touch base and see if you're in a better place. And I get a patient who's I mean, they think they're so excited to be there and they think they're ready for their journey. But you guys know that working in this for a long time, depression and all these adverse experiences are going to be, for most people, a barrier to success. So I don't want them to come in and say, this diet didn't work, when that's not the issue. I want them to get the help they need so that then we can move forward together.
You know, that's so amazing. We just recently added the home stress inventory to our repertoire. And basically, I mean, it's like exactly what you'd know. It's all right. How do we let the patient know how difficult this is going to be? Right. I think that's one of the interesting things about these screens. If they come back, they take a Yale food addiction scale, it's through the roof. The binge eating scale is through the roof. They have a significant amount of stress in their life. Let's say there's a death of spouse, a divorce, a relocation, job relocation, right? Okay, so now we can quantify and tell them, and then you check an insulin level, it's very high, their adiponectin is very low, their CRP is through the roof, you know, and they're postmenopausal and they're short. Like, hey, I just want you to know, it's not that this isn't doable. You know, this is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. And I found that this is actually pretty helpful, to help patients understand how complicated the process is, how difficult it is going to be for them. Have you noticed that? Have you been able to, are you seeing the same thing, you know, kind of?
Absolutely. In fact, I get in front of it. So when I do that informational session, I say, look, I know this is exciting. I know you're really eager to lose weight, but if you have terrible depression, unless it's about your weight, you know, if you have depression that's not well managed and you still feel depressed, if you've got a lot going on in your life, and I specifically say, you know, if you're the person working a full-time job, a part-time job, going to school full-time and taking care of your kids, you actually don't have time to devote to this journey right now because it takes a lot of work. And I oftentimes tell people that losing weight is a learned skill, just like learning to play a symphony, learning to climb a mountain. You are going to have to practice behaviors every day to be successful. And if you don't have the time or the energy right now to do that, it is going to be very hard to be successful. It is not about changing the food. That is the small part.
Yeah, it's such a huge thing. And I'm not going to let you escape my question. What do you think are the biggest determiners of whether someone's going to be successful or whether they're going to fail on what you're doing?
So I've tried to look at that, and I'm not sure that I can answer that question because there are some people that I would absolutely guarantee you will not do well, and they surprise me. So one other thing I ask them to think about when they're at the informational session is how they want to approach their journey, because I really individualize it. I spend the info session talking about how carbohydrates, especially processed ones, got us into this mess. And so I tell them my approach is to remove those carbohydrates. That is the approach I use. However, so this goes back to my iteration. Initially, everyone went on a ketogenic diet. Well, that didn't work so well because sure, everyone would do better on a ketogenic diet. But if you can't do it and you leave me, then I haven't helped you. So I let patients choose how they want to move forward. I say that can be from changing one carbohydrate a day to a ketogenic diet, somewhere along that continuum. So they feel in control of how they're moving forward. So some people will tell me that they're going to go slow and they come back killing it. They're actually on a ketogenic diet. I didn't put them on it. I told them what it looks like, but they give me goals. Okay, so between now and the next time, we're going to measure you on going from a large sweet tea every day to a small sweet tea twice a week. That's what they've chose as their goal. We actually use a lot of motivational interviewing to say how confident they feel with their goal. And if they're not confident enough, we choose a new goal. Somebody once told me this, and this is another one of my Wolverisms. If we make goals and the patient comes back and doesn't succeed in those goals, shame on me. We made the wrong goals, not shame on the patient.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that was like a real epiphany to me. So I had them choose their goals, make sure they feel confident about it, and come back. So again, for that person sitting in my seat, I oftentimes think the one who's really excited, I ask them what their confidence is at that initial weight loss visit moving forward. And I'm going to go back and look at the confidence level and how well they do. But my gut feeling is it doesn't correlate initially. Because sometimes people who I think are incredibly confident, either life gets in the way, things happen, or it's not. I talk about when you first start a ketogenic diet, it's very sexy. You feel great. It's easy. Everyone's saying things to you. You're eating foods that you thought have been forbidden for years. But just like a new relationship, that charm sort of wears off after a while. And what you're left with at that point in time is the skills and behaviors you've learned. And those have to be learned. So some people will just change the food in the beginning, lose a lot of weight. They don't really have the time, the energy to learn about the behaviors, and then they gain the weight back. Maybe they have sugar addiction or things that we've really not been able to address. So I don't have a good answer to the question yet. Do you guys? I'm going to ask you. Do you have a person who's going to be successful?
We were hoping
we have
you
the
did.
answer. I'm going to tell you, we have the answer, and we learned this when we've reapproached every single patient who's regained weight because our patients can't escape us. Either they don't get on the scale or the scale goes up, and then we reach out to them, right? I mean, it stays down. Obviously, some people keep going down, obviously, but when they don't get on the scale or it gains weight, we reach out to them. What's going on? Can we help you? Right? So this is totally observational, totally clinical, okay? And I wish we could publish this, and I've talked about it, but it's always stress. 100% stress and mental health is the cause of weight regain in our practice.
And family support. Lack of family support.
So maybe even a sabotager. Right?
Yeah.
So in the home. So, but I'll lump that into stress. So if you look at the home scale, which is basically relationship stress, job stress, family stress, health stress, kids stress, right? Mental health, stress, this is 90% of weight regain. So, and it. I didn't need to tell you that. You're nodding your head, and the listeners can't see, but you're nodding your head, but we all know it, right?
So what I say about that, I completely agree. And what I say is things go along great, and you're able to do this just fine until one of three things happen. So one is you get a taste of something sweet, and you don't know what to do with it because we're not really practicing the skills. And especially people who are sort of black and white and say, I won't touch anything, and they don't develop the confidence I can stumble a little bit and then pull it back in. So these people just, they're really sugar addicted, and they don't know what to do, and their cravings just come raging back. Or life stress happens. And when life stress happens, especially if you haven't been doing this for a long time, it's unreasonable to think what you have always used to manage your stress, you're going to completely change that in 2 months or 6 months. Again, these are learned skills, and you're going to always revert back to what you have done. I call that the destructive way to manage your stress rather than learning all the constructive ways to manage stress, but that takes time and energy. So I completely agree with you, but I don't have the data.
Yeah, and the other thing along those lines, we've interviewed enough people on the podcast in our clinical experience also who say that they deal so much better with stress now than they did before when they're eating a high carb, high sugar diet. So there's something to this where people say, Ken Armstrong, for instance, he's lost 200 pounds or something ridiculous. And he says, look, I couldn't handle the stress I've been under, but I'm dealing with it, and I'm not going back to those foods, right? It's not his stress relief anymore. He might go for a walk. He might do something different. And that's the thing is we go back to our, it's like, I kind of make the joke about, do you remember when they say when you have conflict with your spouse, whoever's holding the card gets to talk and the other person doesn't. But people go back to their own, forget the card. I want to, and they go back to their coping mechanism, because that's when you're in the fight of the battle, that's what we go back to. Right. So when people felt better eating ice cream, their brain wants that. And it's a struggle for sure. And so finding new coping mechanisms, like Rob Sybis talks about, it's like, okay, instead of having your, cookies, have some tea or have something else that's going to give you a bridge at least so that you can get through that panic time. But that's like all the stuff you're talking about. I remember in residency thinking, okay, we've already eaten now because we don't know when we're going to have time to eat again. Then we get a break an hour later. We've already eaten now because we don't know what we're going to do. So we all gain weight, right? So, eating more frequently in the middle of the night and being stressed and tense and sleep deprived and, all those things are a total disaster for trying to lose weight. And I agree with you. I've had people come in and I said, I don't think you're a good fit right now. I don't think it's going to work. And it's going to frustrate me and it's going to frustrate you. It's probably not going to be worth it. If you're not ready to give up alcohol and you're drinking 12 beers a night, you're wasting my time and your money, really. And the other thing is we give a discount for couples because we have couples come in and all I need is one of them to be strong. If one of them is strong, they're going to, as an example, one of my patients struggles with depression, anxiety, stress. Her coping mechanism was always fast food and donuts and things like that. So when she was really stressed, they say, let's go for a donut run at 11 at night, right? They would go for a donut run. And 2 weeks in, she said, let's go for a donut run. This COVID thing's stressing me out. And her husband said, no way in hell, ain't happening. We're doing this thing. And then she said, I'll have a couple of strawberries, and she was happy, right? Her sugar didn't spike. But those kind of things, if one person can be strong, if you have one friend who says, we're going to go walk today, even if you don't want to, you go, okay, they're waiting for me, I got to go. I have friends like that. So I think those are really critical things.
Support.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. The couples thing. So when I first started, when I had the initial weight loss class to teach patients about how to do a ketogenic diet, I always told them, make sure that you bring somebody who you live with, because I want them to know how to support you. Now, 7.5 years ago, when I said, eat bacon and eggs, people were like, what? They'd go home and they'd tell their partners that I said to eat bacon and eggs, and their partner would say, you need a new doctor. She's obviously crazy. Now everybody knows what a ketogenic diet is, which, by the way, I think really has pluses and minuses we can talk about. But having that person there to support them and learn how they may be sabotaging them with all good intention. Because again, how do we show each other love? By food. I know you've been working really hard. Here's a box of chocolates. I love you. And that's not helpful. I actually have some couples where, the other person won't really change behaviors. And so I make them find a closet or a box to lock up their junk. So that, because I say, look, I always equate it to alcohol. This stuff is addictive. And I've actually gotten through to some partners, having them come in on the visit. Now we're doing them, majority of them virtually. So it's very easy for them to come in from work or wherever and say, you need to think about your partner as having an issue with alcohol, and you wouldn't leave alcohol out. I had one patient who was at home and she said, let me show you what I'm dealing with. And she took her phone and she showed me the kitchen was set up like a bakery with all of these, pretty display things with cookies and cakes. And her husband loves to bake and he left them all out. I said, well, this is a disaster waiting to happen. You're sugar addicted and he's giving you a smorgasbord here. And when he came in and we talked about food addiction, you could just see a transformation about how he's now going to help her.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the community and support systems need to be re-engineered. We've seen from the Framingham study that obesity across a population, it spreads like a virus. Okay, it literally spreads like a virus in social networks and social clusters, meaning like it's, the people that you're going and, having your stress eating donuts with, right? They're going to get obesity too. Right. Or the people that you go on your, community walks with, or the people that have a sound way of handling their stress probably will do better in terms of their weight, or the people who are not, using food for kind of emotional healing, right? They're going to do just fine. So I think there's something to that, creating a positive community and support system. And one of the things that you said that I want to come back to is, if you get, so you are now like, and I call this, I tell my patients, we're like OnStar. You remember those GM cars with OnStar
Sure.
on them? We're like OnStar. Okay. We're like OnStar for obesity, and Brian says this all the time. If you get a flat tire, what do? You call AAA. Okay. So you're doing that. You're like, if you gain 5 pounds, you need to call me. You need to talk to me. If your appetite is out of control, if you're like off the rails, you need to talk to me, right? And I think that that's the most important thing. We are becoming a sense of support and community for them, right? And whether or not their spouses or partners or whoever is supporting them, we are a support for them. If we can get their family to support them and their community to support them, that's a win for us. It makes our job easier. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that you've also utilized social media to kind of create a support system and a network of support and community for your patients. Can you talk about when you started that and kind of what's happened with that?
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. Our patients need to absolutely be embraced, almost for us to give them armor to succeed in this world that is laden with sugar and starch. And so the more you can connect with them in many different ways where they are, the better off you're going to be. So one of the tools that we started very early was a Facebook page for my group. And I'll tell you, the first probably 3 to 6 months, I would just post and it'd be crickets, nothing. And I just keep at it every day. And then one person would post. And now we have a community. It's only my patients, so it's a private community. Nearly 1,800 patients on it now. And it's completely self-sufficient, although I'm kind of addicted because as the provider, I'm actually measuring the temperature of the group by seeing the posts. I'm seeing when people are posting successes. If I see too many successes, then I start saying, hey, who's struggling? It's okay. I post things like, remember, now here's another Wolverism, when you least want to see me is when you most need to. Unfortunately, I don't have the great monitoring things that you're doing. So I have no way of really knowing how my patients are doing, and I don't have enough support to be reaching out to people who have gone away, although I actually plan to do a study on that, so maybe we can work on that together. So I hope at some point in time to have the ability to have everyone have electronic scales and we can see what's happening and reach out to them. But most of my patients,
insurance doesn't pay for it. That's the biggest problem. Is
Yeah.
the insurance doesn't pay for it, and it's a challenge. And a lot of this, we try to get a bulk discount. We pass the scales on at cost. So we try to make it as affordable as we can, but within the insurance model, and I know you're within the insurance model, it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. Anyway, but we're happy. I'm excited when somebody says they want to work with me. Oh man. Somebody like you, especially. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't wait.
Everyone's gonna be upset with you that you schedule a podcast right after this because we could talk for 4 hours right now. I'm so excited. I love this, and I've just been making observation. Sue, I see your kindness and how sweet you are and how dedicated you are to what you do, and your patients have an unfair advantage. You have the unwin factor. You do. You really do. You're very kind and very decent, and patients, you can't fake that. You either care or you don't. I think it's a huge deal. It really is that you care, and you're doing Facebook groups, all these things that I want to model myself after you, people like you, and your knowledge and your education. I really do get emotional looking at that because I think, man, your patients are so blessed and so fortunate to have you, that you care, and your staff. And it's so important. People need a place where they feel loved and cared for, that someone is in their corner to help them through this challenge that has been it's been their prison. So this week I've been thinking about it because when I see someone realize they're addicted to sugar, I see them realize the dysfunction they have. As I can hear the chains hit the floor. I could hear the chains hit the floor from being a prisoner all these years. When someone says, "I'm not hungry this week," that's weird. What do I do about that? It's weird to them. They can't imagine this because when they come in, I had a lady last night very scared from Mexico, and her family loved her enough to drag her in against her will almost. And to see the look in her eyes that I don't have to live like this, excuse me, in pain and miserable. It's something. There's a reward in that. That's, money, all the money in the world can't buy you that feeling of a family love and knowing by impacting that one person, we're impacting, excuse me, the entire family. So it is really remarkable, and what you're doing it is remarkable. And I already ordered the book, so.
Well, I think
I took a break and did it real quick.
I think one of the most interesting things here, and I just want to say, the lifelong learning. I mean, just like from being a serving in the military, surgeon, going back to medicine, getting obesity medicine trained, going and to the reading this kind of the Beck solution, and then reading about food addiction, and then pursuing mental health in your practice. It's clearly. You're inspired. you're inspired to help people. And I think that that's refreshing. And I look up to that. I really do. It's we need more people like you doing what you're doing. I mean, here you are, in a role kind of running this multidisciplinary clinic, and you're thinking about other programs to add, other features to add to help that last 20% that maybe you're not hitting, or the 10%. I mean, meanwhile, all of our colleagues, they're like, I mean, sadly to say, and Brian's talked about this, they're thinking about, killing themselves. They're burnt out. They want to quit. They're going to go back to hospitalist work. They want a shift job, right? So it's really a breath of fresh air. And thank you for everything that you do.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate those incredibly sweet comments. But I got to tell you, it's a little more self-serving than that, because I was one of those physicians that was just burnt out and just had it, and doing the dance of, tweaking the diabetes and hypertension medications, having the patient come back, nothing's better, tweaking them again. That's not satisfying. What I do now is the most fun I have ever had in medicine. When people cry when you take them off their insulin, oh my gosh, you just want to keep helping them. I mean, literally, I almost feel guilty for taking money for what I do, because I get so much joy and satisfaction. And I'm doing now what I wanted to do 30 years ago, but never did. So, and I stand on shoulders of giants. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Eric Westman, because he came and did one of those one-day seminars in my town, and I went up to him and I said, hey, can I come see, what you do? You're down in North Carolina, I'm up in Virginia. It sounds like we have a very similar patient population. I spent 2 days there, and as I said in the beginning, once you see it, you can't unsee it. In my whole practice of 20 plus years in medicine, I had gotten 2 people to lose weight, and one had already gained it back. In one day with him, I saw 17 patients in follow-up, 16 had lost weight. I'd never seen anything like that. So, people like him who really were at the pointy end of the spear, really had to go in the face of complete opposition. Tim Noakes and, other people like that. I just so appreciate Gary Taubes and Nina Teichholz and paving the way for me to do what I do, because I don't honestly know that I would have had the fortitude to forge forward, to have the joy that I have in medicine now. And I would also be remiss, I don't do this alone. I do this with an entire clinic. I have the most wonderful scheduler, the very first point of contact, that takes the frightened people, as you're talking about, and makes them feel like they're going to be heard. They're going to be appreciated, that this is going to be a different experience. To my wonderful nurse practitioner, you talk about me being kind. Most people wouldn't say that. She sends people to me when they're not doing well. I'm going to send you to Wolver. She's the most kind, wonderful, understanding person. To my health coach and the health psychologist, as you know, it really takes a team. So I absolutely have not done this alone. And they always have great, all the ideas aren't my own. They come from the team. So it's a team approach.
You guys should all move to California, is my opinion. Our weather is so nice here. There's a lot of craziness, but the weather's nice, right? But yeah, no, I agree. I was just sitting there yesterday thinking, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this job. I really can't. I love it. I love talking to people. I love getting in their brain and helping. And I know Tro's the same. We have a passion, and that's why, this week I kind of decided to take a little break off of Twitter, because I saw the negativity and the attacks on great doctors and great clinicians who are doing great things from someone who's never treated a real patient yet, right? And when I see the amount of attention those kind of things get, say, let's focus on what you're doing, how do we help people, not criticize each other and bring each other down because we have a different philosophy on stuff. How do we help that patient? And if I have to switch over and alternate what I do, just talking to you for this hour is so valuable to me and Tro. And sometimes people get upset with us for talking, but we're taking tools from you that I'm going to take back to my patients, and I'm going to be a better doctor, right? So if we're open to that and not be arrogant, saying I have the only way and no one else, right? We all have to learn. We're all writing notes from what each of us are saying, because it's so critical, because we're in a disaster. We're in a disaster situation until we change what we're doing. And we have enough, and we've seen it. And I think once you see those amputations and all the disasters that come, that's what gives us the passion. I don't want to deal with that anymore. I don't want to be wrapping feet and putting Una boots on anymore. I don't want to do that. So if I can't help you, then I can't help you. But if I can help you, we're invested 100%. And that's what I see in you. And I've always seen that in Tro. And it's just such an honor to be practicing the same type of medicine. It really is. Tro?
No, you know what? I'm going to echo everything. You guys are amazing. You guys inspire me. Brian, you inspire me. Sue, everything you're doing. It's just hearing you talk gives me goosebumps. Now being with you on this interview, hearing everything that you're doing, lifelong passion for learning, being inspired. It's just an honor to call you a colleague, and thank you for everything you're doing. Keep doing. I'm not super religious, not as religious as my partner here, but I think you're doing God's work. So keep it up.
Well, thanks. I hope this isn't our last chat, because I've really enjoyed talking with you, and it's so fun to talk with people who are doing the same thing and seeing the same success.
So
you
how
have
do
an
people?
open door, 100%. How
Yeah.
do people track you down and find you? I'm glad you're on the East Coast, so you don't take all my patients from me. But how do people find you? And
You know
track
what?
you
There really are enough for all of us. That's one thing that I never worry about.
Absolutely. It's an unfortunate truth. It is. It really is. So how do people track you down if they want to find you, if they want to hear about you, on social media, wherever, because it's really critical what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn is sort of, I'm sorry, not LinkedIn. Twitter is sort of my professional face. They can just go search for VCU, as in Virginia Commonwealth University, medical weight loss, and they'll find the program. And all they need to do to get into the program is actually call 804-828-9357 to talk to that wonderful scheduler that I talked about, 804-828-9357, and they can start the process. Now, of course, they can only come from within Virginia if they plan to do telemedicine. If they're outside of Virginia, then they would have to always do in person, because we can only do telemedicine in Virginia. We've actually done telemedicine for years, even before the pandemic. So that's been a great tool to help patients who live far away in the state of Virginia.
How about for our Twitter folks?
My handle is Low Carb Doc.
All right.
Perfect.
I grabbed it before anybody else did. I did it a long time ago.
That's why I couldn't get it. Dang it.
That's right.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so excited about what you're doing. Everyone, thank you for listening. This is gold. This is amazing. This is, Tro and I are learning, and just love it. So Sue, thank you. And you have an open door. I would love to hear your wisdom. I think we have so much more to talk about. And I'm just happy about your patience. I'm hoping that someday we can network all of our clinical experience together to really help people, because I could imagine sitting down like this and having my patients listen to you and hear your wisdom, and listening to Tro and taking things from him, because, we may not be exactly the same on all of our fronts, but I think when we're there to help people, and, certain people are going to benefit, some people need a harder line. Some people need hand holding. Some people need understanding. And when we get into that, we start figuring that out. It's this addiction model. We have to really understand that if we want to get out of this situation. So there's a lot of bad advice out there, but there's no bad advice here that I've heard. So Tro, you can close this, man, since you're the
I'm going to echo what you say. Hopefully we can develop a way where all of us can kind of work together, a sort of curriculum at the least, similar messages, so that all of our patients can benefit. Guys, I'm getting goosebumps. Thank you so much, Dr. Sue Wolver. And I love the Wolverisms. Love it. Love it. Absolutely. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, and everyone, thank you for your support and for listening. We really appreciate it. We know you got a lot from this episode, so stay well, keep the faith, stay strong. Don't worry, watch that stress level, and just love the people around you.